This is Glambition Radio, episode number 224, with Capricia Penavic Marshall, former White House Chief of Protocol. Welcome to Glambition Radio. I am your host, Allie Brown. I'm an entrepreneur, mentor, investor, and mom of twins. I love thinking big, doing different, and exploring ideas that disrupt the status quo, especially when it comes to women, because we are rewriting the rules for leadership, business success, making money, and changing the world. And we're doing it with style. Let's go. Today's guest is such a refreshing class act. And ironically, I discovered her in People magazine, which is like, look, I don't read that all the time, but it's like bubblegum for your brain sometimes. You just need to sit and veg and hear the same celebrity gossip. And I'm on vacation with Brett and the kids in California. We're driving around. And it's just one of those days I wanted to just get a Starbucks and putter around a Walgreens by myself. Those of you who are moms, you know when you're like, I'm going to go out and run some errands, and you are gone for a while and you're just puttering through the aisles. You know, you pick up some foot cream or whatever it is. It's an excuse to get out. And I pick up some magazines and I'm flipping through People at the pool. And there's this little blurb about this incredible woman and her new incredible book. And I'm thinking, wouldn't it be amazing to talk with her about the experiences she had? Because not only was she initially White House social secretary in the Clinton administration, but she was President Obama's chief of protocol. And what that means is she was the person who would stand in for him at very high profile events if he could not attend. This woman had to know every country, every culture, every administration inside and out. I mean, the pressure that she had in this position, I can't think of many things that would come close. And the stories and the wisdom and the things she witnessed will go down in history. And she's here today to share many of these with us. And you've got to pick up her new book. It is called Protocol: The Power of Diplomacy and How to Make It Work for You. And I want you to listen on how many of the approaches and strategies that she shares can and should be translated to business. I personally think we've lost the art of protocol. We've lost the art of having some social graces that are there for a reason. I know we're a lot more casual these days as a society, as a culture, and that translates to business as well. But there are some reasons for these things, and I was so happy that she wanted to talk about it. And there's a very funny story about Obama and some Asian noodles, which you have to hear, and the ceremony that ended up being such an important one to bond two countries together. First, quick shout out to 2 reviews we got off Apple Podcasts. I so appreciate it. And I read these. So thank you for leaving them. I know it takes a minute, but we love it and it really helps the show. The first is Nikki Leonti from Australia. Thank you. I love this podcast and one of the only ones I listen to regularly. I just love how you have next level conversations with incredible women who are nailing it in business. Thank you for the inspiration. And NJ Dancer Chick from US. As a busy business owner and mom, I don't have a lot of free time, but I sure enjoy listening to this podcast in the car. The info is great for all, but especially women. It feels lonely running a business, and this podcast is just the thing you need sometimes. And a quick reminder that this show is sponsored by The Trust. It's my new private premier network for 7- and 8-figure women entrepreneurs. We have some incredible things coming up this fall. We have live events. We have virtual events. We just signed up several new members. This is a tight-knit, high-end group of women. If you're beyond the basic masterminds and networking groups out there, this could be exactly what you're looking for, because that's why I created it. I didn't see anything like this for the women at this level who don't need necessarily all the how-to anymore. They need the who and the what if and the bonds that these conversations create at this level. So if you or another female leader you know is craving something like this, go to jointhetrust.org. More details. We have a brief form, and you can have a quick call with my team to see if it's a fit for you. Now, get ready for a powerful conversation with Capricia Penavic Marshall. Capricia, I'd like to know where you are right now.
Oh, hello. It is so wonderful joining you. I am actually sitting in my living room in my home in Washington, D.C.
So you're still there, like you're in the middle of it all.
I am here right in the middle of it all. We have so much going on in our nation's capital, but a bit of a respite here in the calmness of my living room.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So we were in the pre-chat. I need to share with all the listeners that I was embarrassed to share. I actually caught your book profiled in, I believe it was People magazine, that's the kind of thing I like to read when I'm on vacation. I just, a little bubble gum for the brain. I would have never thought I'd find such a fascinating book and person featured in there. And thank you for saying yes to this. I'm so excited to talk with you. I'd like to go, first of all, the chief of protocol, how does that even happen? How do you become, I actually talked to a few friends today about my interviewing you. They're like, how do you even become a chief of protocol? Where did this go back? Can we go back in your career and the evolution of this and how this became an interest or opportunity for you?
Oh, well, it actually has been a bit of a long time in the making. I want to say it went back to when my mother sent me to Miss Manners when I was 4 years old.
Really?
And also, the idea of cultural difference was so ingrained in me growing up in a home where I was first generation American, my mother from Mexico, my father from former Yugoslavia, Croatian. We had so many different languages spoken in when we lived with my grandmother in Cleveland, Ohio on East Derbyshire Road. We had friends that were of Polish descent, Italian descent, neighbors that were Lebanese and Russian. And my grandmother served all sorts of food. So many cultures were celebrated. It just was extraordinary. And so it was ingrained in me, this whole idea of celebrating the cultures of others and understanding the differences of people around the world. So I was quite lucky that after working for Bill Clinton, then Governor Clinton, on his campaign in 1992, where my Reagan Republican father said to me, "Uh-oh, this guy's going to be George Bush." And I said, "Okay, great, then I'm going to join up." And I went out on the road and started working for him, and he did win. And I had decided throughout the campaign, after having met the soon-to-be First Lady, Hillary Rodham Clinton, that I really wanted to attach myself to her side of the house and work for the First Lady and all the endeavors that she had. She just, we shared a Midwest mindset, her work ethic. She also was a lawyer. I had gone to law school. There were just great connections there. And she immediately gave me extraordinary opportunities, became my mentor. When the position of social secretary opened up, when the first social secretary for the Clintons, Ann Stock, had decided to leave, she looked to me and she said, "You need to take this position on." Now, I thought I was way too young. I'm 32 years old.
And tell us what a social secretary role specifically is as well.
Yes. So the social secretary in the White House manages every event that takes place at the White House.
Wow.
Those personal events for the Clintons inside the mansion, both on the public floors and the private. Additionally, anything that occurs outside, big bill announcement, policy announcements, celebrations, state dinners, anything that brought the outsiders into the White House, the social office managed. We managed the style, the guest list, what was served, what did it look like, everything, soup to nuts, working, of course.
This must have terrified you. Please tell me it terrified you. I mean, you're everything from diplomats visiting to the Easter egg roll, it sounds like.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Allie. It was exciting. And it was exciting. But again, I was working with a great team of people, terrific collaboration. And what I loved about President and Mrs. Clinton was that they just said, go for it. If you think that there should be, this event should happen outside without a tent, go for it. We trust you and your creativity. And it was just wonderful working with and for them. But after my stint in the White House, and I worked there 8 years, I went back into the private sector. And when President Obama called upon Secretary Clinton, Mrs. Clinton, to become Senator Clinton, actually, to take on the posting of Secretary Clinton, and she took it on, she turned to him and she said, I know exactly who should be your chief of protocol. And she raised me up and she offered my name to him because I really didn't know President Obama. I had only known the Clintons at that point. So he was a little skeptical because the position of chief of protocol works very, very closely with the president. You travel with the president abroad. You are the person that greets foreign visitors on the president's behalf here. You set up all the schedules. You're the bridge between the foreign government and the U.S. government. You manage all the ceremonial activities. You oversee the president's guest house where he invites foreign visitors to stay. You assist with all of the credentialing of the foreign diplomatic corps. There's so much that is involved in this position, but very, very close to the president. Well, after he sought out Hillary's advice on this and listened to why she thought I should have this role, he took it and he said, okay, I'm going to take her on. And I want to say he kind of fell in love with me at that point. We really had a great time traveling the world, meeting and greeting leaders. And I was honored, privileged, just so very much to have had the opportunity to have served him in that capacity for the 4 years that I did.
Yeah. Now that was a leap of position. I mean, into a little, you were in that territory a bit, but now this was a whole different game. Tell us about the gap that you knew as far as skill sets and knowledge that you needed to catch up on quickly.
That's such a great question, Allie. Oftentimes we walk into jobs and we think, oh, I know that, I get that I can do. But I believe that you should take on a beginner's mindset. I had, of course, worked alongside former chiefs of protocol during the Clinton administration. Both Molly Razor and Mel French had served the president. And so I really I understood what the job did. But when you get into the office, how does that office really function? What needs do these folks have at this time? Perhaps it was done in a certain way for a long period of time, and it needs to now change up a bit. But don't introduce changes too early because you may be missing a step, an element that the office actually needs. So I walked in saying, guys, I want to learn from you. And I reached out to the team and talked to every person in the office. What, in your opinion, does work? What doesn't work? What would you like to see enhanced in this office? I also reached out to all of my predecessors, every single former chief of protocol that was living, and asked them, what worked for you? What programs do you wish were in existence today? What was eliminated that could benefit the office today? And they were so incredibly helpful. In addition, then, I really started to network with my counterparts around the world. I reached out to everyone that I possibly could in most of the critical countries, beginning with the G20, those chiefs of protocol that I knew I was going to be meeting with, depending upon, working side by side immediately once I took on that post.
And, for those who may not be familiar with the position and exactly what it entails, can you give the complete definition of what the chief of protocol is responsible for?
Sure. So the chief of protocol is a political position appointed by the president. You are given the rank of ambassador. And the reason why you are given the rank of ambassador and have to go through a Senate confirmation is because you stand in place of the president at many events. You represent him and stand in his place at many of the events. So when he invites a president, prime minister, king or queen to the United States, I immediately go into planning mode. I coordinate their schedule. What will they be doing while they're here? How will they interact with the president? What type of meeting will that be? It is a basic working meeting, or is this an elevated state dinner? Depends upon what type of invitation the president will have extended. And then from that, there are so many elements that come into place. I always went out to Andrews Air Force Base, and I was that first hand that was extended to greet them. It actually was my favorite part of the job to say on behalf of President Obama, welcome to the United States of America.
Oh, I have chills.
Right? It was a wonderful moment. And you also saw in those foreign visitors, presidents, prime ministers, kings who would look back at me and just beam in that moment. I am here and I am going to be meeting the president of the United States. It was a weighty moment. Additionally, I traveled with the president everywhere. Anywhere he went around the world, I went. And again, coordinated with my counterparts on the president's schedule, making sure that every detail was attended to. What were those cultural nuances? What were some of the foods that he would be experiencing and being to explain that? What were some of the rituals that they wanted him to partake in? And in determining whether or not this was appropriate for him to do or not. And then if I determined yes, that to explain it to him, make sure he understood that. And, just being there also as an advisor when those spontaneous moments arose and he was not quite sure what to do. And then reminding him in many regions, do not chew gum. It's offensive. Put your feet on the ground.
Yeah. Like, was there ever a moment that, well, there was a quick story I read in another interview you did that was, can you tell the noodle story really quickly? Because I think that just sums up your position and how you had to be on your feet and kind of the go between with culture and the president.
You bet. Yeah. So this was a really important visit. It was the first visit between President Hu Jintao of China and President Obama in China. It was a state visit at President Hu's invitation. And the evening before the state visit, President Hu invited President Obama to a private dinner at the Diyu Tai, which is like the Chinese Camp David, if you will. And we were in Villa 18, and all the staff is crammed into this back room while the dinner began. We're a little jet lagged, I will tell you. And just at the top of the dinner, my counterpart comes racing over to me, and he's like, Ambassador Marshall. I said, yes, Ambassador Chong. And he said, I have a very urgent question for you. President Hu would like President Obama to make a noodle. And I was like, I'm so sorry, excuse me. And the Chinese adhere to really strict protocol. They usually lay everything out up front. So for this to be offered up, on the sidelines, I was like, wait a minute, what's going on? This is so unusual. It must be really important. Well, it was.
And at the same time, too, I'm going to guess you're also thinking, how will this be perceived back home in the media? Will this be made fun of? Like everything you're doing, you have to be conscious of. I just imagine like 10 different aspects in the moment.
100%. And I was really lucky to be traveling with an extraordinary team, and I, of course, turned to them and said, this is what's happening. And they looked back at me and they like, what do you think? Do you think you should do this? And I said, listen, this is coming from President Hu. It is a cultural, it's a ritual of theirs. It's very important. It does not sound complicated. I think you should do it. And they're like, okay, you tell them. So I walked over to President Obama and whispered in his ear that President Hu would like you to make a noodle. And he kind of looked up at me with this like, what? Look, I got to know that with this squinty eye. I really got to know.
Like trusting you, but like, okay.
Are you kidding me? But didn't say a word, did not, he just looked at me and he's like, okay, Capricia, let's make a noodle. Stood up, clapped his hands together, stood next to President Hu, bounced this little piece of dough between them, creating this long, thin noodle, which to the Chinese was representative of the longevity of this friendship. Look, we are beginning here and it's going to continue on and on and on. And more Americans and more Chinese joined the line. And they were very singular then in the strength of this relationship. It was symbolically very, very strong. And President Obama understood that. He understood the importance of these cultural rituals in countries in creating and establishing these new relationships. And it really put he and President Hu on a very strong first step.
Wow. Was there ever a moment you got into a situation that you weren't sure what to do?
Yes. There were several times where I was asked for the president to engage in various endeavors that were not on the schedule. And we really worked hard at making sure that we knew solidly what was that plan, because preparation is key in protocol. You want to make sure that in protocol, you have that well-defined roadmap for your president or leader. And whether it was a small engagement or a big engagement, it was going to carry that negotiation, that discussion forward. And when it goes off tracks, it can cause some confusion, a little bit of misunderstanding. You want to be nimble, you want to be flexible. I talk about that quite a bit. It's important to have those elements as a part of your planning, but you need to have the preparation and the planning. So when it's not a part of it and someone's sort of throwing you, a side hook there, you're wondering why. Why is this coming up now? What are they trying to do? You really have to look hard and weigh the pluses and minuses of it. And then I often would, explain to my counterpart why it was impossible at this moment if I believed that this really wasn't something that was going to change this relationship or advance our diplomatic endeavors. And so more often than not, I leaned into saying no.
Yeah, I imagine because it was scheduled every 5 minutes anyway, and they're trying to slip something in. So protocol obviously has become, it was before, but even more so important to you now. You just wrote a whole book on it. Tell us about what protocol means to you and why this is still important for people to understand.
It became so clear to me, Allie, on the last day of my posting. Well, the last day of my posting actually was when I was sobbing uncontrollably in the Oval Office to President Obama, and not wanting to really leave my job, but knowing that I had to move on because I had other endeavors that I needed to take care of with my son. And I stepped out into the private sector and started to engage a little bit in some consulting in my company. And I realized, boy, people are having a super hard time in their businesses and even in their individual lives at making these critical connections, at investing in relationships, making those relationships that are going to matter to their ultimate goal of their business or just in some way in their personal life. And so that's why I set out to write this book. I thought, boy, I've got some lessons to share and tools that I've developed over time that I think would be super helpful to people. Why is it important to invest in a relationship? How do you go about investing in that relationship? By showing respect, looking at those outcomes, continue the scales of the relationship, the parity, the reciprocity. How do you develop a trust between you and that person that you're working with so that you continue that relationship forward? How do you arm yourself with every advantage, and why you just should not ignore protocol because it can affect everything. We've seen this on the public stage when protocol isn't adhered to, that intentions sometimes are questioned. You can look clueless, or you can actually look as though you intended for something to go in a negative way. And that's the worst of all outcomes. It completely deviates from your intended path of the planning that you had set forth, all that preparation to try to achieve a specific goal. So that's why I thought I need to lay these lessons and tools out for the larger public so that
like, people remember this. Kind of like a last call to arms. I mean, do you think it's a dying art, unfortunately? Do you think people mistakenly think sometimes it doesn't matter anymore?
I do. And I don't think it's a dying art. I do believe that there are those who say, what does it matter? It matters so enormously. Why not be fully prepared? Why wing it? I always said throughout my time as social secretary and chief of protocol, fail to plan, plan to fail. You can influence your outcomes when you are prepared. You can, invest in your goals. It's so optimistic in that way. And, there's a lot of stress in these exchanges, and you can calm that stress down. There's so much that you can avoid if you just lay out that proper roadmap in front of you.
Yeah.
And it's empowering, from selecting the right room. How do you rig that room to work in your favor? What's the type of mindset that you want to have when you go into that engagement? What's the mindset you want them to have when you go into that engagement? All of that can be so incredibly effective at reaching your ultimate intended goal.
Yeah, this is perfect. And you're going exactly where I wanted to go, because next I was going to ask you, most all of our listeners are businesswomen, entrepreneurs, We have some high level professionals listening as well. And, the skill sets you're talking about, give us some examples or ideas how those can translate to business.
Oh, in so many different ways. And, again, throughout the book, I really try to reach a business mindset. And in particularly women, I devote a whole chapter to negotiating while female. A business's identity, I think about it very similarly to a country's identity. How are you branding this? What is your cultural ethos about your business that you want to make sure is conveyed? How did you define it? How does your entire team understand and work under that same ethos? Cultural IQ is enormously important. Who you are, how are you presenting yourself? I had to think about that every day when I was representing the United States of America and President Obama. What was it that I wanted to convey to our counterparts, to other countries? In businesses, like a Chiva protocol, you could hire a culture officer, and they are the ones who are in charge of making sure that that ethos, that business identity is well defined. And then how is it shared? How do you onboard new employees so that they understand exactly what your expectations are of them? I think that's all really, really important. In particularly in these days when we really want to embrace diversity. We want to bring on people of different backgrounds, different ideas, different thought processes, because we know that when we have diversity around a table, we get better decisions. We make better decisions.
Mm-hmm. When you look at this compared with, etiquette, for example, how is this different?
Oh, well, etiquette is the lovely cousin to protocol. And I talk about etiquette very specifically in one chapter because it's your social codes of conduct. We tried very hard while my son was growing up to teach him how to greet someone, shake hands, look someone in the eye.
Lost art. Yep. Good.
All of that. And then, what is the proper utensil to use, flatware at a luncheon, at a dinner table, because there will be these moments when, he has his first interview where they take you out to dinner, when we go back out to dinner again. And, knowing that all of this being second nature to you and feeling really well equipped is empowering. And you then are thinking about, how do I want to present myself? What are some of the issues I want to make sure that they know about me in this interview? How can I discuss their company with them so that I look relatable? You're not thinking about, oh goodness, do I use the big fork or the small fork? Which is my bread? Where is that my wine? Is that not? It sounds simple, but it's really, really important. And in particularly today, how are we re-engaging in our new social codes of conduct? How are we inviting people to our homes so that you feel relaxed, you feel welcomed? That's a part of etiquette. It is setting a tone. It is making people feel calmed and invited, and and setting a civil atmosphere as well. We live in some tumultuous times right now. People are uncertain. People are cloudy, and they want to feel certain. They know what is expected of them. So again, I have been sort of called into duty to try to define these new social codes of conduct during a social distancing time period and helping people manage their way through it.
Yeah. You also have mentioned linking empathy and humility to diplomacy. Can you talk about that for a minute? Because I thought that was really interesting.
Both President Clinton and President Obama were just brilliant at understanding how to open channels of communication with individuals, whether it was their counterparts or individuals that they needed to create a direct connection with, by using a characteristic that came quite naturally to them, empathy. They put themselves into the shoes of that other person and were able to create that important connective tissue with them, then developed into a relationship of trust and understanding, and then moved towards a collaborative relationship. It's really so empowering again. They think that when you think of a president, many think, oh, they have to be decisive and strong and moving that ball forward, bull in China shop. And some of the more powerful tools are empathy and humility. We actually are seeing it right now during this time of the pandemic. Jacinda Ardern, the Prime Minister of New Zealand, an extraordinary woman. When the virus hit, she was very decisive. She gathered around her a lot of experts and made a very quick decision on which path to
Mm.
take with her citizens. But then she sat down late at night in a Facebook Live discussion open to the citizens of New Zealand to with an empathetic heart and said, I know this is going to be hard. Believe me, I know what you're going through. But together, if we do this together, we'll get through it. And it worked.
Yeah.
They haven't had a case in I dare say almost a months. Very, very effective tool.
Yeah. Yeah. She's well known for her empathy. And it's interesting to see that now as a new role model for leadership because we haven't been able to witness that before at that level. And I would like to think, of course, because it's a woman as well. So it's just nice to have more women in leadership because we bring that in.
Well, we've seen that, Allie. I mean, we literally have seen that in many prime ministers, Chancellor Merkel as well in Germany, in a variety of different countries. There have been women at the helm who have moved their countries by warp speed, as they say, ahead of others.
Yeah. So tell us anything else about the career, especially within the protocol range did anything surprise you once you got there?
Absolutely. One of the surprises to me is that I guess I shouldn't have been was as I traveled the world as a woman that I thought, I'm in the position, I should be taken for granted that I should be treated in the same manner as my male counterparts. And yet again, time and again, there were these moments that arose where I had to sort of fight for my positioning. And I realized, and that's why I wrote this final chapter in the book, is that, we're always in a state of negotiation. Women are because, we're in a male dominated world. We're always trying to figure out ways to bridge and to influence. But I really had to adopt an equalizing mindset. Listen, I am as good, if not better at this job than you are. And when I got excluded, I pushed my way into the room and said, I deserve to be here. You're going to be giving information that all of your leaders are going to take advantage of. And certainly it's a power pivot to have that information. I should be given that same treatment. And so it was a little surprising to me that I had to, at that level still, push my way
Yeah.
in, not feel as though I should defer my power because I was a woman. Sometimes my seat was in the second row, and I'm like, no, I will be seated at the table, and I'm going to sit in the center of the table. And also another talent I wish I would have honed in on earlier in my career was how to network better. Networking is also so empowering. Finding those key individuals that throughout your career who can offer you wonderful advice or assist you in meeting other individuals who can help you in your career objectives. So very, very important. And it took me a little while. I became a bit better at it later on in my career, but that was the one surprise, and I guess the one thing that I wish I had done a bit better.
So tell us more about where to get the book, how we can support you before we wrap up.
I am supporting those independent bookstores. And so please, your independent bookstores around the country, please invest in them. Most independent bookstores have it on their shelves. Politics and Prose here in Washington, D.C. certainly does. I would also say that you could get it at Amazon. Amazon has been selling it like hotcakes. You could go to Amazon.com as well.
I also got it because I wanted to get it before we talked. I got it on the Apple iBooks version. Yeah, it was great because when we travel, I have all my books on my iPad. Because sometimes I like both. When I'm home, I love reading a real paper book. There's just nothing like that. But when I travel, I like it on the iPad, and so I have that as well, which was helpful. And also, I love that you can highlight and do all kinds of stuff with that version. So in case you didn't know that your book's on there too, sometimes people don't know. They're like, oh, that's interesting. Fantastic. So to wrap up, Capricia, can you share with us 3 great pieces of advice for all the women listening?
First, don't be wedded to that career path you thought you should be on early in your life when you just graduate from college or even shortly thereafter. Be open to new experiences. Take the off ramp and try to travel down a different road. I found that it led me to the most extraordinary life, and I'll never look back again to what I was going to do. I also would say, be curious, have that curious nature to learn so much about things that are not within your wheelhouse, or amp up your game, learn the rules of etiquette, sit down and actually give yourself a session on how to improve your own personal social codes of conduct. And lastly, just live a life that is kind and civil to others. It comes back to you twofold.
Well, I'm sure you're on a lot of people's good lists, I'm going to imagine. They're still calling you for advice, I have a feeling.
Thank you, Allie.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Capricia. And everyone listening, you have to pick up the book, Protocol, The Power of Diplomacy and How to Make It Work for You. I was just so pleased going through it. There were things that I could apply right away to how I thought about relationships and business, which is why it was so great to have you on the show as well, but especially how we can translate this to our businesses and our careers. So Capricia, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. This has been such a pleasure talking to you.
Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining me for this episode of Glambition Radio. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you subscribe so you automatically get new shows every week. And I'd love if you left us a review. We are on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other platforms. And I'd love to hear from you. Come join the conversation online. You'll mostly find me on Instagram, but also on Facebook, Twitter, and more. Just head to alliebrown.com. You will find them all there. And you can also learn about upcoming opportunities to meet in person. Glambition Radio is the elevated conversation for women leaders, and I'm honored you've tuned in.